specifying computer is intelligent, and I don't think it's intelligent. I think to be intelligent, the computer needs to be able to have a schema and then apply what it knows and the knowledge it has to a new situation, one that it's not already prepared for.
Yep, I agree with that, definitely. Let me just read this little excerpt about criteria for measuring computer intelligence. And I want to see if you agree or disagree with this. Okay, I'll read through it. It's about a page long, so give me a minute or two. In the last 3 decades, research in artificial intelligence has revealed that in order to create more human-like programs, the control of a given process must not reside in a master program, but in the very data that the master program works on. We may think of the mind of a robot as consisting of the database in which the external world is represented through sensors that reflect changes in the outside world. So this is even more complex than chess now. It's like an organic data set where almost anything is possible as an input. In short, the migration of control from programs to data permits external events to trigger internal processes. When this degree of dispersion of control is achieved through daemons, which are basically messages that can self-direct, it's not important to get into that, we could say that the machine has acquired a mind of its own, but can robots really have a mind? There's no direct answer to this question. All we can do is establish certain criteria for machine intelligence and see if real robots meet those criteria. In 1950, Alan Turing proposed his test for determining the intelligence of machines that was basically an acting test. Place a human and a computer in separate rooms and let a second human try to decide which is which through a session of questions and answers. If the computer can fool the human interrogator, then it must be said to have at least a primitive form of intelligence. But this simple test must be revised in light of many recent AI programs that are based on a repertoire of canned answers, which manage nevertheless to fool human users into attributing beliefs and desires to them. So what do you think about this criteria? Do you agree with that criticism? Do you have an alternative?
I mean, it's certainly something that used to be used to distinguish humans from animals, that humans could prevaricate. If you could lie, then somehow you had a higher order intelligence. But I've never heard of it applied to computers. It's kind of fascinating. Yeah.
It's almost, it reminds me of what we talked about, that rat lab demonstration I spoke about with the rat in the giant cube, where it looks like when the light goes on, he does all these gyrations and runs upstairs and jumps over the thing and rides the elevator to get a food pellet. And it looks like, well, the first time you see it, you're amazed. It looks like the rat is engaging in all this purposeful behavior, but really he's just been trained and conditioned. It's almost like the Skinner's ideas of how, well, you don't need to think about the black box to understand people. You can just look at input and output to put it in computer terms.
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying before, you really need a way to gauge how a computer would react to a new scenario, something that hasn't been trained on. Now, when it comes to applications, I mean, it also depends on the application, right? So, like Pandora, I think it's somewhat intelligent. Like, it gives me songs that I like that I haven't heard before. It's working for its intended purpose. Now, if it's something a little bit more important, me playing a song on my computer, let's say it's a machine that's supposed to identify an enemy target for a weapon system, like the Predator drones. Those are all flown by humans. I wouldn't be surprised if in 15 years they're flown by robots, and the robots identify the targets and execute, pull the trigger. It's a little bit more important that they get the right target in that situation than if you hear a song that you don't like, right?
Yeah.
So, what kind of criteria could we use? How could you test this? I mean, of course, the criteria is whether or not it hits friends or foes. But what are your thoughts? How do you think you could test this without hurting the wrong parties?
Can you just mark your guys with something that can deter the drones? Like have some sort of infrared sensor that would tell it not to hit these targets?
Yeah.
That'd be just the simplest thing you can do.
But what about targets that you don't want to hit that don't have that marker? Like, let's say,
civilians?
Right, yeah. I mean, you can't just go around and interview people and say, are you a civilian? Give them a little marker.
You can run simulations.
Yeah.
I mean, video games basically do this already, right?
Mhm.
You play Call of Duty or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And video games now do have some pretty basic intelligence applications.
I hate to once again give the impression that all I do is watch TV, but last night I was watching The Good Wife on demand, an episode from before Thanksgiving where a sergeant who actually targets drones was on trial for killing 12 civilians, and they had one of the witnesses testify and said that they haven't the lawyer brought up, the good wife herself brought up that aren't a lot of people, civilians killed in these drone strikes, and the witness said that, well, they have an algorithm, and they look at the value of the target they're trying to kill, and then are there children in the neighborhood, is there a mosque, and that they're using algorithms. Now, I don't know if this was just fiction, but that they have an algorithm that says if this target is high value enough, then yes, you can kill a few civilians, or you could kill a couple of children.
But yeah, and it's scary to think of something like that. I mean, I don't think we're at that point yet where it's just a computer algorithm that's deciding whether to pull the trigger. Because you have, I've actually flown a Predator simulator before. You have a pilot and a gunner, and they have video of everything that's happening in real time. So that you have human beings deciding what's happening in real time. But what about when it gets to that point where you have robots deciding to kill people? I mean, like, what are the implications socially for that? I mean, it's a big question. Yeah.
For number 8, actually, I talked pretty much exactly what you were talking about, except instead of a predator, I saw on the History Channel one time, like this robot that moves on its tracks on the ground, and if someone shoots a weapon, then it can detect exactly where it came from, and I think it can point to where it came from too, here and up and down also.
Yeah.
And eventually it'll be able to shoot that exact location. But my question is, maybe he doesn't shoot, and the robot can, find the enemy. But what if that enemy is holding up like a white flag or something, and it decides to shoot anyway?
Right. Or what if it's smart enough to know that it's holding up a white flag and doesn't shoot?
Or that. But
Because you also get into the question of, humans are error prone, right? Humans
Exactly.
make mistakes too.
The robot might be able to eventually make decisions better
than human,
can.
yeah.
Right.
That makes it sort of like a double-edged sword, because on the one hand it's more comforting because there's no risk of emotion interfering or like fear or whatever, but on the other hand it's scarier just because it's
a computer.
We don't trust
empathy.
Do we want human error or do we not want human error?
Exactly.
Well, when you look at those robot surgical knives, nobody
Da
would
Vinci?
object to. Well, the doctor may have not steady hands, but if you get the robot to do the cutting with the laser, the outcome's going to be much better. So I think there's a threshold below which we wouldn't even give it a second thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it depends on whether the emphasis is on human or on error in that phrase, human error.
Mm-hmm.
And because when the stakes are greater for ourselves in sort of a selfish way, we're willing to say, yes, machines can do this, but when it makes us it pushes us to the point where it's being inhuman, then it's a little scary.
Yeah, it's a matter, I think, like, morally, it's a question of accountability. Like, maybe the computer error is smaller, but maybe you still want humans accountable, or maybe not. It's a trade-off.
Yeah, who do you hold accountable when something does go wrong in that case?
Yeah. So, like, for example, the algorithm I had mentioned earlier, where my professor was working on a way to diagnose breast cancer. The goal was, I haven't spoken to him, I don't know how far he's taken it since then. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. The goal was to make it more accurate than a human radiologist looking at the image, and I think he was pretty much